a question for you, very basic. What does it mean to be nice?
To respect the well-being of others.
Thank you, husband. To respect the well-being of others. That's a good answer. Nice. What does it mean? I don't know. What does it mean to be nice? Pleasant, open, gentle, candid. Okay. Respectful. I like that. Gail? Acceptance. Okay. Mary, did you say something? Considerate. Okay. So just a question that's always sort of irked me. Is there a difference between being nice and being kind? Are they just synonyms, or is there something else underneath a kind? What do you guys think?
I think being kind is more.
Okay, so Linda thinks being kind is more. Okay, I tend to agree, but the dictionary, that I looked it up in my 20s when this was bothering me a lot, just said they're synonyms, but I agree with you. There's a different feeling about being kind. Being nice is like polite, but you can be polite and you can be nice and still be like undermining, yeah, something. But kind is like intentional. Yeah, kind is more intentional. I like that a lot.
Nice can be more superficial.
Nice might be more superficial. Okay.
Kind requires an action.
Okay, so
You have to act to be kind.
Okay, so Richard says there's an action required of kindness. There's something that you have to do. Okay, so we've been studying Musar, which is the spiritual development course of Jewish tradition. And we've been taking a value each week, and we've been discussing it and figuring out how we might be able to bring it more into our lives in the coming year, since we are going to be doing our Cheshbon HaNefesh in just a couple weeks, our accounting of the soul for the high holidays. So the way the rabbis talk about kindness, or we'll put the kindness and the niceness over here for a second, and then I'll say that we're talking about the value of chesed. Okay, chesed, which is often translated as loving kindness. And I've kind of always thought that was a mouthful, right? Loving kindness. So I'm wondering if maybe we can brainstorm on what the translator must have meant by loving kindness. Why these two words together, and what do you think it means? How do you think it differs from being nice or being kind? That was like 12 questions, but you see where I'm going, right?
There's passion and loving kindness.
Passion and loving kindness. Talk a little bit more about that, Linda.
It's more active.
Active.
Nice is a state of being.
Mhm.
Kind is a state of doing, and loving kindness is being and doing.
Okay, so for those of you at home, Linda's saying that loving kindness is like an action of kindness. Is that what you said?
State of being.
And nice is a state of being, right? Okay, so I like that. Stan, go ahead.
So there's an old expression, originally somebody attributed to Aristotle, but then, no, that's not true.
Wasn't Aristotle. Okay,
That is, be kind
be kind.
because you don't know what the other person is dealing with.
Because you don't know what the other person is dealing with. I think that someone in AA said that, but I'm glad that we have attributed it to Aristotle.
Loving kindness adds a dimension to that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so you had your hand up. Can you share your name? I'm Shira. Hi. Cole, nice to meet you. Shira, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I said like accountability, like with yourself and with other people.
Okay, so loving kindness, Cole is saying, has to do with accountability with yourself and with other people. Okay, I like that. Thank you. Jonathan?
So I feel like loving kindness is kindness that is backed up by
Action.
yeah, it's backed up. It's legitimate.
Okay, so kindness that has like a resume, right? Okay, kindness that's backed up. Okay, I like that. Susan and then Richard.
I think kindness, you can be kind to a stranger, but when you're kind within your family or your congregation or whatever, then that's loving kindness, because you really know the person and you're giving them love. But we can all be kind to strangers, but not.
Loving kindness. Okay, so Susan is drawing perhaps a difference between the kind of kind that we can be to someone who's a stranger and the kind of kind that we can be towards someone that we know and love. And perhaps that's loving kindness. Richard? Thanks, Susan.
The loving part, I
Okay.
think,
Okay.
right? And the kindness is leaning on the sense we were speaking before, that requires an action.
Action.
So
Yeah.
it's an action motivated by an emotional relationship to somebody else.
Great, great. I like that. Okay, so Richard said, I'm going to poorly repeat what you said, but that the loving part of it is the emotional state, right, that might prompt us to behave that way. And then the action is the kindness part. So it's sort of what we were talking about before. Did I miss a part? All right, okay. I got that pretty good, he said. Okay, so chesed in Hebrew is from the same root as the word chasidut, which means piety, right? So in the rabbinic mind, kindness has something to do with piety, which is, kind of might seem like it's out of left field, but in Judaism, that traditionally we see God as embodying, or the opposite of embodying, God demonstrating the most chesed imaginable, right? So our template for chesed, for loving kindness, whatever we call this, is God, because God gives without any expectation of return. So if we want to, be godly, if we want to sort of embody the idea that we are made in the image of God, the way to do that is by emulating God's chesed. So I want us to talk about like the selfless aspect of chesed, of loving kindness. So how does that sort of influence our definitions of loving kindness? And more importantly, how could that get us to a particular translation of chesed that I'd like for you guys to open in the first page? I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but in the middle paragraph, the author of this book that you'd think I was getting a commission for, okay, it's really good, you should still buy it, Everyday Holiness by Alan Marinas, Study of Musar. Okay, so this second paragraph is, he says, I'd now venture to translate chesed as generous, sustaining benevolence. Right, Fred, that's exactly it. He says that's surely more clumsy than the already clumsy loving kindness, but it conveys so much more than just being nice and wishing well in your heart. And here's the example that I think really hits home. If you are walking down the street and someone is walking beside you carrying a large box, and you offer to help the person carry the box, that's not chesed. I think this is a little bit extreme, but it says you'd simply be a terrible person not to help someone in that situation. I think a better way of saying that would be, if you had a back that was functional, you would be a terrible person not to help them in that situation. What counts as chesed, is when you are walking in the opposite direction from someone who's carrying a burden and you turn around to help carry that load in the direction he or she is going. That's chesed. So I'll take your question in a second, or your point in a second. But I just want to stress sort of what you guys were saying before about action, right? The feeling and then the action. This is demonstrating that in order to practice chesed in Judaism traditionally, we have to stretch. It's not just the nice thing that we can do that's presented to us. In Judaism, we actually have to seek out the chesed, because if it's not a stretch, it's not chesed. Do you want to finish this up?
Actually, I didn't like that part of his definition because it seems to necessarily involve a sense of self-sacrifice. And if I am carrying a big box down the road
Mm-hmm.
and somebody helps me carry it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not more impressed by the fact that the person turned around. I'm just as happy to have somebody walking in the same direction help me carry it. And in fact, there may even be less of a sense of obligation or guilt or less of a sense of imposition by somebody who turns around and walks with me. The key thing is that somebody helps me carry the box down the street. So I would question whether, in fact, that addition, that it must have this element of self-sacrifice in order to be chesed, I would wonder about that.
So it's interesting. There's a whole debate about it in the book, which I recommend that you read. But what I liked about that particular part is the idea that it is something that we can grow like a muscle in ourselves, right? So if we're going through our day and we're like the kind of person who smiles at everybody all the time and says hello, that's lovely, but it's not chesed. It's just a friendly personality, right? That's not chesed. But if there's something that actually does take some, I don't know that it's self-sacrifice. I think I agree with you there. It's not self-sacrifice, but it's a stretch, like a little bit of a stretch. Cole?
Like empathy, like taking yourself out of your shoes and thinking about someone's situation they're in, right?
Right, yeah, getting out of your own head.
In a way, it's like putting other people before you.
Okay,
It
so
could be self-sacrifice.
you're saying there is sort of a selflessness involved. Okay, Fred?
How about those people who volunteer to do things like candy stripers in the hospital?
Yeah,
Or the other people working in the hospital that volunteer, go in there and help the people who are sick and so forth. I mean, they're getting a great feeling in themselves,
but that's okay,
but at the same time, they're doing something that they don't have to do.
right?
Volunteering to do it, they're going there and doing that.
Right, if I did that, that would be chesed. That would be a stretch for me. Smiling at people when I see them on the street is not a stretch, right? But the idea is that it's different than tzedakah, right? So tzedakah, which is, as we all know, incorrectly translated as charity, is actually justice, right? So for tzedakah, we're not commanded to have a feeling about it. We're just commanded to do it, right? To give 10% of what we make to others who need it. That's tzedakah. It's not chesed. Chesed is this other thing. You actually have to feel it, and you have to do it not because it's commanded. And it's okay if you get like an added benefit of feeling good about it, but if you're only doing it to feel good about yourself, it's also not chesed. So it's interesting. Linda, you're going to finish us up, and this has been like a 20-minute Devar Torah, so let's wrap it up.
Great. Tzedakah, you can do tzedakah and be having a pot of veto or grumbling about it. Chesed is the whole heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my hope for us in the coming week, oh, Susan, okay. Okay, this is it, people. This is it. Susan's the last one.
What's the difference between a mitzvah and chesed?
Oh, chesed? Okay, a mitzvah is a commandment.
Right.
And chesed,
To do a good thing, but here you're also.
it's not a commandment. It's not one of the 613. It's a value that the rabbis and our tradition has deemed important, but it's not actually commanded. We're commanded to be joyous on Purim, okay? We're commanded to be lamentful on Tisha B'Av. This is not a mitzvah. This is not a commandment. This is a value that's hard to practice, that when we practice, we grow stronger and we grow a muscle that keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that candy striper can only probably do that for a certain amount of time until their heart's so big with chesed, they're going to need to put something on top of it in order to stretch. And again, it's not a law. It's just if they want to keep, they could be fine with their muscle being that strong. But if they're 16, they've got a whole life in front of them in which they could grow their chesed. And imagine if you're candy striping at 16, imagine what you're doing at 30 or 60, right? So let's grow our chesed muscles. All right.